Hi everyone, it's Lemon. I thought I would share with you some feral insights of my feral witchcraft. I have stepped some twigs in my hair for the purpose of a spell that I'm doing that I'm going to share with you later. But and I was getting ready theatrically, and I started to think I will take y'all along with me on explaining what I think feral witchcraft is. And ferality for me is just beyond the bounds of societal levels of acceptance, appropriateness, and possibly even hygiene. Okay? The dirtier, the more feral. Now, that doesn't mean to say that feral in the actual animal kingdom way is dirty. Okay? But it's a way to uh, for me, it's a way to clear up the taboo of purity and the taboo of cleanliness. Okay. So I wanted to go over it with you guys. Now, I took some notes, so I'm going to be looking down. One thing is the skin. The skin as my greatest organ, and also my hair, because it's an extension of me, is a part of my ferality that I like to tap into. When my hair is knotted and dirty, it's been over a week since I've washed it and brushed it, I tend to be at my most feral. I tend to be able to unlock the ferality within myself and my spirituality. And the skin and the hair are the two main things that I utilize with this, these concepts. So I'm using skin as because everyone has skin. So, skin to the seasons. This is my feral witchcraft has a way of I'm unlocking my witchcraft to the seasons that are present to me. So all four seasons offer their own ferality that I want to tap into. So in the summer, I'm tapping into the heat, I'm tapping into the humidity, I'm tapping into the drought aspect of it. In the fall, I'm tapped into the releasing and the letting go. In the winter, I'm tapping, these are like the feral things that go with seasons for me. In the winter, I tap into the feral aspect of dormancy and bitterness and hibernation. And then in the spring, it's regrowth, rebirth, renewal. Those are the feral aspects of spring. And so I just want to be able to go through the seasons in my own skin. Okay. So it's basically skin to the weather. I tap into the feral qualities of the seasons by allowing all of those attributes of the seasons to come to me through weather. Moon bathe, rain bathe, sit out in terms of like looking and experiencing the weather in very primal ways. Um, rain baths are very, very cathartic for me. When I stand out, I let the rain just soak me through, clothes and all. Um, and then I just, to prevent getting sick, whatever, I jump in a hot shower after the ritual. But rain bathing, jumping in a pile of leaves, snow angels, these are things that I do with as minimal clothes on as possible if I can't go sky clad. And as I live in a neighborhood, I can't go sky clad all the time. Okay, so it's really not an option for me. Unless I'm like buried in the woods somewhere, like deep in the woods somewhere, which hardly ever happens, unfortunately. But so it's skin to the seasons, then it's skin to nothing. Years and years ago, well, first of all, I've always been a barefoot goddess. I've always been a barefoot person. I think shoes are prisons. Every time I wear shoes, I feel not sickly, but I feel oppressed in a bad way. It tends to overheat my body, and I tend to only wear shoes if absolutely necessary. Okay. And a few years ago, I decided to go full commando. Well, no, I decided to go commando in terms of underwear. Now, that doesn't mean undergarments, because I would be a free the bra person if my boobs weren't absolutely ginormous, but they are. So I can't just have them hanging out all the time. So I do have to wear a boob constraints, but I don't wear panties. I don't wear underwear. I go commando. So it's this aspect of the skin being at its most feral too, in the best, I will say, in the safest way possible, because going commando isn't always safe. Okay, and like you can't always go commando, so there's limitations to everything. But I am very much a skin to nothing type person. I like to have my skin experience the things. So that's an aspect of my ferality as well. As closest to skyclad, like I said, as possible. That's my feral witchcraft in and of itself in terms of my skin. And it's embracing the Chthonic of myself. Is my ferality is embracing dirt, and it's embracing the Chthonic in a way that is the primal too. So that can be blood, bones, dirt, swamp water. I make this thing with my feral witchcraft. It could be like a potion, but it can't ingest it. You can only use it to anoint things. It's like an anointing thing, and it's pitch water, which means there's it's ashes and dirt and salt and old pieces of burnt wood and just like dirt, compostable dirt. But it's in a water, and it turns into like this bog. It smells bad, and it's bog, and it's like it turns black. And I call it pitch water, and I use that to anoint like candles and certain tools, maybe certain twigs that I use to theatrically anoint myself. But yeah, so there's an aspect of the taboo, trash and death and blood and bone and dirt, and it taps me into the underworld themes that I explore in my witchcraft. Now, there's an aspect of my ferality that has no room for purity in it. Okay? That means in terms of like cleanliness close to godliness. It's more underworld. My ferality is more primal, more ancient, more primitive than the modern notions of purity. And when I conduct a feral ritual or am doing something in my feral spellcraft, I tend to want to use my creativity in the chthonic and taboo and feral ways. So it's very it's like basically what my witchcraft is. I try to get down to the core essence of primitive life in a modern way. How can I ecstatically, shamanistically embrace witchcraft and embrace my magic? How can I do that? That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Okay. Now, when you talk about purity, you talk about the fact that to be opposite of that is to be like non-hygienic or unhygienic. It's to be neglectful. It's to be dirty, right? But I do it in a way that is taking back the power of those things, taking back the power of death, taking back the power of entropy, taking back the power of hygiene that works for me and my body and my pH balance and my own cleanliness and my own care. And should I choose to neglect, it is in a form of sacred sacrifice. So yeah, I want to see, nowadays feral is all about being unapologetic, and that is a large part of it, is that when I am engrossed into my feral witchcraft, I am very much engrossed into the outward projections of the unapologetic, the tendency of the unapologetic, the longevity of the elements, the longevity of the universe, the sweet and spice of the universe, and how it works in these mysterious ways. Okay? Ugh, my eye itches. I wanted to go over a little bit of things that I have done and that you can do. Okay? One thing is like feral chanting. You can do this with prayer beads. You can do this with an intentional rhyme in terms of a spell, or you can do this in terms of affirmations. But one thing that I'll say in terms of like prayer beads, right? I have, now when I use my feral witchcraft, when I'm using the feral chants in terms of prayer beads, I tend to use my dark goddess beads. So there's an overlap for me there. But in terms of prayer beads, you typically have like a couple of sections. You have major cross point beads, and then you have one big bead, right? And there's different chants for each. Now, for each bead in the regular bead, normal, like the normal bead, like there's usually 5 of them in a section. If there's a normal bead, I'll say feral, wild, alive. Feral, wild, alive. Feral, wild, alive. And I just intentionally say those 3 words, right? Or you could just say those words over and over again per bead, whatever. On the cross beads, where you're supposed to go to another mystery, okay, in terms of the rosary, you could use, I've divided mine up into, instead of the 5 mysteries, the 5 aspects of my ferality. So that is a battle cry, like a battle cry in terms of warrior status. That is, so a battle cry, a moan in terms of sacred sensuality and sexuality. So an actual moan. An aha. So that's information, knowledge, and data. So aha, like you're gaining knowledge. That's an aha moment. That's gathering data. And then ooh, which is wonder. No, I'm sorry, that's 4. Sorry, that's 4 of my mysteries. I didn't do 5. I did 4 because of the way my prayer beads are laid out. So you could do this in terms of sounds, like I did, but you could also do animal noises. You could even try to say, okay, I have multiple spirit animals. Like say you have a fox, you have a crow, you have whatever, a bunny, okay, a bear. You could do their sounds, their grunts. You could caw. Like, I think that would be sacred to caw, literally caw like a crow for each bead, okay? Not just across quarters. You could do this for a bead, any of the beads. You could actually do this for the big bead, doesn't matter. But animal noises, animal sounds, animal grunts. You could do just noises like the battle cry, the moan, the aha, and the ooh for wonder. That's wonder and enchantment. You come up with your own mysteries, but come up with the sections that you can do in prayer beads at the beginning and the end, or what they would call in mala beads, like the guru bead, right? You're supposed to, like, it's supposed to start and end something, the alpha and omega, right? I would tend to say my wild soul or my feral soul. Now, in normal, or in more Catholic rosary types, you say our lady, right? Or our father. But you could say our wild soul, and it could be more of this, depending on what you're trying to get down in terms of the prayer, in terms of the calming effect of the prayer beads. You could do it in terms of a collective force. So you could say our wild soul, our feral soul, in terms of this collective unconscious of ferality. You could even do it going to seasons. So in the winter, it would be more silent. And then in the summer, it'd be more awakened in terms of noises and mysteries, right? So that's something to think about too. when you could rhyme, you could just do something like I wrote down, feral soul, alone you roam, clothes to rags, rags to bone, feral soul, sedate you're not, soul's purities rot. You know, write that down, say it 5 times fast. I don't know, I don't care. However you do your spell, that's a rhyming spell that you could do, okay? Or you could just affirm something. You could do it in an affirmation. An affirmation is, I am that feral witch. Or mine, which is conjure feralty. Conjure feralty. That is my affirmation for my feral witchcraft. You could do a sigil. My sigil uses the word feral. Of course, I got rid of the E and the A. And then I took the F and the R and the L, right? And what I did was I made it look like an open mouth with teeth. It looks like this. So that's my sigil for, like, if I wanted to carve that into a candle for the spell, whatever. So that's pretty cool too. So you can use this in terms of all kinds of stuff. You can ingrain your feralty into your witchcraft. So good. Like today, I'm wearing this. I'm wearing no undergarments, just this like dress to cover me up. And I'm going to do the candle spell, but this is a feral touch-up spell that I was needing to do. It's kind of overcast and drizzly today. It was a perfect day for a feral touch-up. And it's not that, I mean, it's still pretty hot here. It's like it's in the 80s Fahrenheit still. So it's still pretty hot. With that being said, it was the perfect day before it turns too cold to do a feral touch-up spell. And like I said, I usually go as close to Skyclad as I possibly can. So I'm close to Skyclad. I'm not using any ingredients except for these, and I'm going to talk you through the spell, okay? And I might, after I talk about it, show some clips of it, but I don't know. So we'll just see how this goes, you know? But an example spell, the ingredients that I have for this spell today, for my feral touch-up, is fake teeth. I have my children's old teeth in an organza bag on my witchy space, okay? And I tend to get a few of them out when I use them in my feral witchcraft quite often. And I have my dad's old teeth, which are like, they're not dentures. They're hooked up by wires from the 80s. It's like dentures from the 80s that he didn't have for years and years. But I got those when he died. I inherited them because I quite literally asked for them. I asked him before he even died if I could have his teeth when he died. And so he gave them to me. So I have them in another organza bag. So I might use my dad's or my children's old teeth. Don't know. But anyway, I'll use fake teeth, moss. I have an abundance of it growing in my backyard. I just go out there with a butter knife and slice some off. Okay? Not that big of a deal. I use moss. Honey and pepper. Just ground black pepper, okay? You can use any kind of pepper you want, but I use ground pepper because I always have it. And a candle. Now for this, I use a white candle, but you really don't, it doesn't matter. I use white tea lights for every fucking thing. And I place the items around on a marble slab and with this intention, this feral intention, okay? I'll tend to carve the candle first right after I've put the items out and around in a nice orderly fashion. Okay, the pepper and the honey are set aside. So I have moss. I put the moss down, and then I say something about the fact what moss represents. For me, moss represents dirt, Chthonic, and longevity. Okay. And kind of like lichen, it represents for me this kind of resilience, kind of like lotus in the mud kind of a thing. So it's a resilience, moss being a resilience. So I put that and it becomes the bed, like a terrarium bed. And then I sprinkle the fake teeth. Now the fake teeth is about tenacity, it's about notoriety, it's about my unapologetic nature and the ability to say what I feel. So those get sprinkled with that, those intentions going on to the moss. So I sprinkle the teeth, okay? Now I might use one of my chants. I might stop and do the prayer beads here. I might just write down my spell, the actual spell, and put it on a piece of paper, lay the piece of paper on top of the teeth, which is on top of the moss, okay? Then I want spice and sweetness, because my feral tea is on a spectrum, which means that I'm neutral. It's neither good or evil, feral tea. And so as a touch-up, I want an aspect of both sweet and sour and sweet and spicy, okay? And so then, after I've done any of the affirmations, prayer beads, spells, whatever, I'll put that piece of, for tonight, I'm going to put the piece of paper on top of the fake teeth and let it sit there, okay? Then I drizzle honey. Maybe I have some in like a little small offering bowl here, and the pepper in the shaker, because it's normally in the shaker. I'll drizzle with, usually I get my hands involved in all this. I'll drizzle, let the honey fall off my fingers while I talk about sweetness, okay? Earth sweetness, the sweetness that comes from flowers. Think about like honeysuckle dew, sweet nectar, and nectar of the gods. And I'll just expand on this aspect of sweetness that's given to us from the earth, okay? And then I'll sprinkle the pepper. Talk about spice, talk about peppers, talk about the vegetation, the natural aspect of vegetation. I'll think about spice in a natural occurring way. Once I'm done, I will, having already carved or anointed or whatever with the candle, I'll have the candle either sitting on top of this pile of gooey junk or off to the side, doesn't really matter. But for my purposes, the way I pile it on, I put the candle on top as like a cherry on top. Light that thing, let the tea light go all the way out. So it's about 3.5, 4 hours. And when the spell is done, I just clean up the area. I toss the moss back into the moss area. I take the teeth to the sink, clean them, clean the teeth off, put it back in my organza bag. And that's pretty much it. And then depending on how the spell paper is, if you choose to use a spell paper, I just burn that. I just like light it on fire. So now you could, before you drizzle the honey and the pepper with the spell, after you anoint the candle first, right? Like I already said, you could go ahead and burn the spell paper before you do the honey and the gooey stuff. I might do that. Because I like to burn my spell papers. So I might fold it in a intentional way and then just burn that, and then the ash goes onto the pile as an activated spell paper, and then honey, then pepper. So that's a feral touch-up spell that I'm planning on doing in a minute. But so yeah, feral witchcraft is so intense for me. It's a way for me to almost shamanistically, ecstatically get down to the primitive, feral, wild nature of myself. And that's a beautiful thing. It's not taking me too far from society, but far enough away from society to gain some perspective. It actually helps me. I know I'm filming this right now, but it has helped me in the past, before I do a feral spell, to go MIA for a few days on social media. It does help me to go a little rogue for a little while. And if you can't, you can just do it as like a vow of, like, for that day or for the hour before, and like do it in kind of a sacrificial way, like where you're like, okay, for the hour before I do this spell, I'm not going to touch my phone. I'm just going to put it up and not touch it, and just go kind of no phone for a little bit in terms of like a sacrifice. But the whole point is to get away from society, other people for a little bit, get into the solitude, into the silence, and get into your own body and how you feel, and feral touch-ups and feral witchcraft, the practice therein, is really good for me to unlock those things about myself. And it's in the feral times that I've found out the most about myself. For real. I found out the most about myself when I'm in the throes of my feral witchcraft. So I hope that this was informative, and I hope that it was fun to see me all dressed up before a spell. I like what my ferality does to me. I like what being feral does to me. I like the concept of getting down to my primitive self and then writing poetry. I channel a lot of messages this way. Like with the twigs close to myself, as close to skyclad as I can, ritually dirty. I've been able to channel a lot of visions, a lot of messages from witchcraft, from the web, being as feral as I can, being as displaced as I can be, intentionally displaced, intentionally outcasted, lone wolf, rogue, in touch with the seasons, in touch with what rivers to drink from, what berries to eat and which ones to avoid. Symbolically, all this is symbolism and allegory, but the sweet and the spice of the rogue life, and translate that into spiritual practice. So, I hope that all of you are having a magical day. Hope to see you again real soon. Much love.